Many Americans fear globalists. But what exactly is a globalist? And why do people oppose globalism? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Depending on what corners of the internet you hang out in, you've probably heard different things about the term globalism. To some, it's a new socialist world order, or just a far-right conspiracy theory, or the latest Instagram trend. Global core is the new cottage core. To some, globalism is a good thing, while to others it's evil, just like Instagram. So what is globalism? Globalism often gets confused with globalization. Globalization is an economic process. It's where nations interact through the trade of technology, products, information, and jobs. There are definitely pros and cons to globalization, but that's not the topic for today. But globalism, that's not an economic process. It refers to an ideology. The ideology of globalism promotes the idea that all people are citizens of the world, rather than a country. In its most extreme form, there would be no barriers to migration, and no group identity based on nationality. International governmental organizations would be more powerful than individual governments. Some people say this would eventually lead to a unified world government. People who believe in globalism are called globalists. People who use the term globalist generally use it in a derogatory sense. For example, former President Trump used the term when talking about outsourcing jobs, open borders, or perpetuating forever wars.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
The term globalist is frequently used by conservatives to criticize leaders on the left, who they say put other people's or countries' interests above America's. In turn, liberals accuse conservatives of promoting isolationism, which is where a country walls itself off from the rest of the world, also known as what everyone did in 2020. You know it's bad when instead of meeting in person, the UN met on Animal Crossing. Whether intentionally or not, liberals often conflate globalism, which is about ideas like a unified world government and no borders, with globalization, which is about economic interdependence among nations. Liberals have also pushed the claim that the word globalist is actually anti-Semitic.
But make no mistake, where the term originates from is a reference to Jewish people who are seen as having allegiances not to their countries of origin like the United States, but to some global conspiracy. That's where the term comes from. The term globalist is hateful, and that is how we should see it.
But the term globalist, as many on the right use it, has nothing to do with Jewish people. I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. When people refer to someone as a globalist, they're referring to people who have broadly two main goals. The first one is collective decision-making. Globalists see the world as a collection of one big people, rather than groups divided up by nations. Some argue that there needs to be more collective decision-making because, as the World Economic Forum puts it, global issues require global solutions. They argue that the complexity of the global issues is far too big for any party to tackle alone, which is why globalists push for what's called global rule of law. It's the idea that a higher authority can and should override individual countries' authority. And it requires governments, corporations, and organizations to put international law above their own self-interest. Someone needs to rein in these transnational organizations, like Krispy Kreme. Stop spelling things with K's. That should definitely be illegal. Global rule of law could be a good thing if, for example, there are international laws that prevent countries from persecuting their own citizens. But as we've seen time and time again, authoritarian regimes often just ignore international laws they don't like. Take China, which has been a signatory to the UN Convention Against Torture since 1988. That hasn't exactly stopped it from torturing its people. Then there's the issue of state sovereignty. If international law takes precedence over national law, How can a country protect its people? And would there still be countries if governments can't pass laws that go against international laws? The second goal of globalists is to have collective values. Globalists generally want international coordination to fight against global threats like climate change, war, poverty, and disease. One way they want to accomplish that is through global citizenship, the idea that we value our common humanity above all else. Globalists think that by being a global citizen, we will have more empathy for others, regardless of their race, religion, ethnicity, or where they come from. It's not just academics or people in government who have such optimistic views of globalism, though. Big tech companies like Facebook are looking into ways to promote their idea of collective values. Collective values like storing barbecue sauce on your bookshelf. In his 2017 Facebook manifesto, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg wondered how we can help people build an inclusive community that reflects our collective values and common humanity. His solution? Establish a new process for citizens worldwide to participate in collective decision-making by exploring how collective decision-making might work at scale. What does that look like in practice? Well, by having community standards that reflect our collective values for what should and should not be allowed. This, of course, leads to a lot of problems. There are many different values in any given society, not to mention between societies. Big tech companies like Facebook and YouTube know this because when they set up community guidelines, they have to conform to some people's values and not to others. But even if we manage to somehow get everyone on board with common values, there are other problems with the globalist movement. I'll explain more after the break. Welcome back. Globalists believe that the interests of the collective world should trump the interests of individual countries. It's the whole greatest good for the greatest number of people thing on a global scale. But who decides what is the greatest good? And how are they held accountable? Those who are against globalism argue there's a lack of accountability among globalist elites, whether in government or the private sector. Take big tech, for example. Like I mentioned earlier, big tech companies talk about collective values, but they ultimately decide what those values are.
Technology companies actually have sovereignty over their digital space. They not only determine what the rules are going to be, but they actually create it from the ground up. They're the architects. They drive the algorithms. They own the data. They decide what to do with it.
And as a consequence, they exercise a level of sovereignty that makes it very hard both to understand what is driving their business and to think about how one might go about regulating it.
If individual governments can't police big tech companies, who does police them? Consumers? Shareholders? Krispy Kreme? This becomes a bigger and bigger issue as more of us rely on a small number of big tech companies to conduct business and earn a living. If your business takes place mainly using Facebook, you have to conform to Facebook's rules or you could lose your livelihood. Then there are the issues of the elites who run global institutions. To see some of the problems with global governance, you only need to look at the United Nations. The UN was meant to be a body where the world's nations could come together and work out their differences so that they didn't need to resort to war. That sounds good, and there are instances of countries resolving their disputes through the UN. But the UN has also generated a lot of controversy because there's been a lot of corruption. Not to mention, it's been hijacked by authoritarian countries. Take the UN Human Rights Council, for example. Some of the most egregious human rights abusers sit on that council, like Russia, China, and Cuba. That's like having an International Nutrition Council run by Krispy Kreme. If you want to know more about the UN Human Rights Council, check out the previous video we did on it. I'll put a link to it in the description below. So in summary, globalism is an ideology that claims to find global solutions to solve global problems. But it also enables a small group of unaccountable decision makers to run the world. Which would you choose? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you like the show, please know we could not do it without direct support from viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered and contribute $1 or more per episode to help us keep the show going. So click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.